Okay, we'll get started. Let's call the Planning Commission of the City of Royal Oak to order. Let's introduce ourselves, starting to my left.
Dan Godak.
Charlene Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Ann Vara.
Doug Hedges, City Planner.
Jeff Chase.
Eric Klooster.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Under new business, we're going to call the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority to order first. We'll convene that, and then after that, we'll call the regular meeting. We'll close that, and then we'll call the regular meeting of the Planning Commission back to order. So, under new business, we have a Brownfield plan, BP 180601, and a reimbursement agreement to demolish equipment rental facility, Buttons Rent It Shop, and off-street parking lot, and construct a 3-story mixed-use building with 77 multiple family dwelling units. This is at 1112 to 1126 South Washington Avenue. Mr. Hedges.
Yeah, this is a request for a Brownfield redevelopment plan for a property that the Planning Commission has recently reviewed 2 applications for a planned unit development for this site to redevelop it into 77 multiple family dwelling units and other ground floor uses and ground floor parking. They are now seeking to have a plan approved that would allow them to be reimbursed through tax income recaptures for environmental remediation at that site, specifically the removal and disposal of contaminated soil and groundwater and a few other activities. The plan proposes a total reimbursement of $389,912 over a reimbursement period of 5 years. The remaining time of the 10-year plan period, TIF revenues would be collected for the brownfields of the city's redevelopment, a revolving loan fund for brownfields. The plan proposes to capture both non-school millages, and it proposes a capture of school millage rates, but only for pre-approved activities as are outlined in the amended plan that was sent to you today. Therefore, it would not require approval by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. There also before you is the reimbursement agreement, which the board enters into with all applicants for brownfield plans. As I noted in an email to you earlier this morning, the petitioner is requesting a few revisions to the reimbursement agreement, and the director, Mr. Twing, has not yet had an opportunity to review those and comment on them. So what we are seeking this evening is first a recommendation on the brownfield plan, which would be forwarded to the City Commission for their formal review and approval, and then to have the action on the reimbursement agreement postponed until the next available Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hedges? Okay, now seeing this is the petitioner here for the Brownfield. Just your name for the record, please.
My name is Jenny Doherty, and I'm with PM Environmental. With me, this is Fred
Blackman.
Oops, thanks. And then I also have Jamie from PM Environmental as well to answer any questions on the environmental. So the introduction that Doug gave, I will just kind of elaborate on a little bit further. The property is formerly Buttons Rent It Shop, and it has been that facility since the 1960s. Other historic occupants have really included a restaurant, Salon, from the 1950s, 1960s, and there was also a dry cleaner on the property as well. Our investigation there did not reveal any contamination. The plans for the property are to demolish the current buildings. There is asbestos in them, so in the plan you will also see some of the abatements and anticipated costs for that. And as was mentioned, the planned redevelopment is going to be a 3-story, 77-unit apartment building. And with that, there are ground level enclosed parking spaces, basic building services, and as well as 4 retail units. They are putting in a new entry drive from Parent Avenue, and those will replace the current entry drives from the streets. And then the unit mixes are primarily 1-bedroom units with some additional 2-bedroom units and some additional dens and a studio. I will let Fred speak to the investment in just a moment, but just so that you have the determination for eligibility, the property was determined to be a facility. Through Phase 1 and Phase 2 site investigations, we've revealed contamination of soils and groundwater. Both VOCs and PNAs are above applicable criteria for this property. Within the plan, you'll see them kind of broken down into their categories. The pre-approved activities, which are his Phase 1s, Phase 2s, and the asbestos survey. The total for that request comes to $26,260. And this is the portion that Mr. Hedges mentioned that would be subject to school tax portions. And because they're pre-approved, we do not have to go to MDEQ for their approval of a 381 work plan. The rest of it is due care activities with the soil excavations and groundwater removal, some additional sampling and oversight, monitoring and reporting that's going to be required for the project. That portion will come to about $257,500. We have limited site demolition also included, and that's really just to remove the concrete that is currently over the UST basin. So that concrete needs to be removed so that we can remove the soils that are contaminated beneath it. And then, as I mentioned, we anticipate asbestos abatement to be in the range of $30,000, and then also the Brownfield plan preparations. And then lastly, there is a contingency, 15%, which is allowable under statute, as well as 0.75% interest. And then, as Mr. Hodges mentioned, that total comes to $389,912. The administration fees and the state Brownfield plan, according to statute, are included in those, and those are obviously deducted before the developer gets reimbursed. Also, as mentioned, we anticipate the reimbursement to be complete within 5 years. There is one overlap year with the capture into your revolving fund, sorry, I combined words. And then these numbers and projections are based on the current taxable value, just over $400,000, with the new taxable value estimated at $3.5 million. I think that's really all I have. Fred is also here to answer any questions, and as well as Jamie.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for the petitioner for the Brownfield redevelopment? Ms. Douglas?
Yes, talk to us about the percentage, the school's percentage versus
Sure.
other taxing entities.
Sure. In the plan, I don't know if Doug has it up. Yep. So the percentages are based off of your capturable millage rates, the local millages that are capturable. So that excludes the zoo, the DIA, as well as any like debt millages and anything like that. Those get excluded from this ratio. Then the rest of those pre-approved activities, the amount that the state school taxes pay for is just the ratio of how many millages the locals get, like each of those local categories versus the 6 mills for the school and then the 18 for the operating.
And tell me about how, if they're pre-approved, then it doesn't come under MDEQ scrutiny?
Correct. So the MDQ kind of recognizes that in order for most people to purchase these properties, they need to do these baseline environmental assessments to understand what's at the property. The reason why they're pre-approved is because those need to be done and those are eligible to be reimbursed. Typically, most of these expenses, you can't do anything on the property until the approval is granted because there is a financial need. But all of these need to be done ahead of time, so the reimbursement, they become pre-approved because they're done in advance of the approval of the plan, essentially. Does that make sense?
Nope.
So let me try again. The pre-approved activities he already had to do, so we can't approve a Brownfield plan without knowing what's already there.
So some assessment has been done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's how we determine what we know the contamination is. That's how we know the property qualifies as a facility and therefore is eligible under the Act 381. Those activities specifically are allowed pre-approval of the plan to capture the school taxes from in his reimbursement.
Okay, I think I get it.
Any questions?
We can go on from there.
Yes, Mr. Chase?
Excuse me, I was trying to figure out, at what point in time, since this plan did come in front of us as a site plan and it has been approved, at what point in time did this all start? Was this done simultaneously as they were seeking site plan approval, or did this just come up because this seems like something that they would have known a long time ago before they purchased the property?
I'm gonna have Jamie maybe help me with this one. I think initially the levels of contamination that we were expecting, it may not have been worthwhile to pursue. I think since then, and maybe with some of the recent feedback that we're getting from the DEQ, is that they're becoming a lot more stringent on what's allowable, and they're kind of cracking down on some things. So
Can you
initially
clarify what you mean by what's allowable?
Jamie, I need you.
Hi, Jamie Antonevich with PM Environmental. So there's changes to the regulations on the state level that are becoming more restrictive, that create a greater need to clean up or remove what's found at the property versus maybe what was thought before. So that's the greater, financial need and compliance need, why this, part of the reason this request is coming in.
So, in layman's terms, they have to do more than they thought and they want us to help them.
Correct, yep. So there was less requirements to remove what's being proposed, as little as, 3 months, 6 months, a year ago.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Godek?
The removal of the concrete to get access to the soil, would that have to be done regardless on this development, whether there was contaminated soil or not?
Yes, under the statute, that is allowable to do site demolition. That's directly related to removal of the contamination.
You didn't answer my question.
Well, I said the answer is yes. Yes, it would have to be done for their development, but the reason it's included in the plan is because that removal is necessary in order for us to remove the contamination.
Because they can.
Okay.
Mr. Godek, were you referring to the third item, the demolition activities, the third item down, or what?
There was a call out for the concrete pad removal. I was reading something else at the time.
Because it's not really itemized, I was kind of curious about that too.
It's
Is
in
it-
the table one, the $5,000.
So that, just 5,000, that's the,
Yeah.
that's
so
the, okay.
that number comes from a proportion that's necessary.
Okay.
So the overall cost for them to remove concrete is much greater. The 5,000 is an estimate of what it will take to remove the concrete that's covering the contaminated area.
And the contaminated part is the 257.5? The soil and groundwater?
That's for the soil and groundwater
Okay.
contamination, as well as additional sampling and oversight.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Chase?
Is there a map? I didn't look through this, it's like 70 pages, but is there a map showing the contaminated areas? Because $5,000 to remove concrete and $205,000 to remove the soil doesn't seem proportionate. Thank you.
Like, how many cubic yards are you taking out?
We have it outlined, I don't have it off the top of my head.
I mean, I didn't comb through the 65 pages with a fine tooth comb, but
In the figures near the end of the plan.
To generally address that, there's a depth component with the soil versus just the flat square footage when we're talking the concrete overlying it.
you said under the table? Table 1 or something, or I'm trying to,
It's within, at the end of the plan under figures,
Looking at it.
I'm sorry.
near the end. They have different maps showing the soil boring locations. Be up higher,
oh, okay.
it's before you get to the tables.
for the tables?
There you go, now you're getting into them.
Looking at the values provided, we're probably in the order of magnitude of 2,500 yards. And then for water, it's up to probably about 50 to 65,000 gallons.
Any other questions? Mr. Godek?
This is gonna be kind of a general, question of a nature, and I apologize if I don't make it clear the first attempt, but, it's my understanding that, you know, the original intent for brownfield redevelopments were for blighted, distressed properties. And they need to fall under like 3 criteria, and this one falls under facility, which all it has to do is meet some contaminant guidelines. I'm hesitant to get behind full site cleanups on a property that's not blighted or environmentally compromised in a big way. Whether this would be approved or not, a developer would love to get his hands on this property and put this beautiful development on it. So I'd let the petitioner try to convince me otherwise, but I usually like to see less impact on the city in terms of, 5 years of taxes being refunded for cleaning up this site. I'll stop there and see how you're going to respond to that.
Well, in addition to the contaminated area, we've encountered numerous and rather sizable expenses that we didn't anticipate with utilities in particular. And that goes back to some history that I'm not fully understanding of, but Detroit Edison is requiring us to relocate telephone poles, or electric poles, I'm sorry. And these are depreciated poles that they can just impose upon us the charge, and it's a burden that we didn't anticipate, which prevents us from being able to carry on some of the other burden of the removal of the contaminants.
Okay, I'll stop my point and save the rest of them for later.
Any other questions, comments?
What other what other utilities do you have to relocate? Are you relocating several power poles? Is there other gas concerns?
We're relocating 9 poles at the last count.
And this
on
wasn't
those
discovered
poles-
through the design phase with your architect?
No, well, the architects didn't, because there's a difference of opinion of what the statute reads of what needs to be done and not has to be done with the poles and the distance. But Edison arbitrarily apparently has the ability to decide they want X number of feet, and if you don't give it to them, they're not going to give you power. And so that's kind of the position we had. So we had to go through, redesign the building somewhat, and then in addition to Edison's wires, you have AT&T wires, and I think, is it Comcast that's your cable provider here? Yeah, and there's Comcast wires, but they're not a significant portion. It's the electric utility that is the big portion of these poles.
All right.
So had you not had to spend the funds to replace the post or remove the post, would you be seeking this reimbursement?
I believe we would have, because we didn't anticipate having that level of contamination. Our first preliminary findings were that it was within acceptable parameters, And then upon further investigation, we were told the problem's a lot bigger than we anticipated.
So if it would have been within acceptable levels, then would you have just built on the site, or would you still have had to remove X amount?
I think I have to defer to you guys. There's certain calculations that
Okay.
I'm not as well versed in, unfortunately.
Sure,
The
I understand.
individual that is out of the country, so I'm kind of standing in.
Okay.
But I believe that there's different classifications of mitigation. Is that the right term?
Sure, I'll let you.
Yeah, I would say there would be some removal, but not anywhere near this volume during the course of normal construction. So
Okay.
the depth and extent would not be what it is, should it be a greenfield site or otherwise clean.
Okay. Mr. Casano?
I hope I didn't miss this because I came a few minutes late, but the 257,500 for the disposal of contaminated soil and groundwater, you said the amount was 2,500 yards? What did you say the amount was?
Yeah, roughly, looking at the numbers, could verify that later, but looking at the magnitude, it looks to be about that. So maybe 35 to 4,000 tons.
Okay, but that's, and I'm not the contractor, there is one on the panel here, but that's $10,000 a yard, that's what we're talking about?
No,
No?
no, because the soil is only a portion of that. There's also water cost and is abatement under that number?
It's not, no.
It's just the water and soil.
So water and soil, transportation, disposal, additional sampling, that would be required to
That's right.
determine when the soil is clean, when we finally hit clean soil. And any other reporting costs that they need to go through to make the MDQ on board with where the levels are at post-excavation.
Okay, and I mean, I understand you would have to take the soil out, you'd haul it away, you'd have to dispose it legally, you'd have to bring in clean fill or aggregate or whatever, and you'd have to test it. But I don't know, is there a breakdown of how you costed out the 257,000? Because just.
Yeah. Yeah, typically a number of about $40 a ton for soil. Water can be about $1 a gallon for contaminated water. Those are kind of general values that are used and backed up by some contractor estimates as well in this case.
Clean fill is about $20.
Yeah, sourcing and placement.
Okay, but I still, just rough numbers, at the 2,500 yards, $250,000, it's still $10,000 a yard for everything for that yard, yes? That's a unit price then. Am I wrong?
You're right. Scratch some stuff down.
There is a breakdown in the end of the plan, table 1. You go to the back.
What page is that, Doug?
It's not there's no page number for it, but it's the 3rd page from the end.
You should have bookmarks in the PDF if you're able to use them. I've bookmarked the tables.
I don't know if we can, I doubt it.
Not
in our browser.
Should be a
Yeah, with the Adobe licenses we have, I doubt it.
I tried for you.
Is it table 3?
Table 1
Table
is.
one.
Okay.
It does break down that number and the different activities.
Yeah, I see that, yep. 140
Thank you.
for the soil excavation, transport, and disposal, contaminated groundwater removal, 65, clean backfill, 20,000, oversight sampling reporting, 32,000. That's the table, right?
Yeah.
So 140,000 divided by 40 is about 3,500 tons.
Mr. Godek?
The asbestos abatement, was that found in the existing structure on pipes, or where was that found?
I believe it's in pipes, some of the window glazing, maybe some of the caulking. I'm not sure if there's tile in there or not, but some of the mastic might be applicable, or the drywall might.
Would that have been found on like one of your first environmental evaluations of the property as it was being bought by the developer?
The phase one will typically come in on suspect materials. The asbestos survey in particular was recently completed, I think.
On a pre-demo basis, probably.
Yeah, we did a pre-demo survey, which was complete about 3 weeks ago, I wanna say.
Mr. Chase?
Am I allowed to ask, or I guess, what you had budgeted originally for, say, contaminated material removal versus what, and then what the DTE costs you're incurring to try and get an idea of where the differential might be? Is that allowable, or?
I think so.
You'll have to comment on the cost, but
I will attempt to, but as I said, I'm not the partner in charge of this. Unfortunately, like I said, he's out of the country, but by just recollection of conversations, I believe the DT issues somewhere between 150 and 200,000, and the other part of your question was?
What you guys had budgeted originally for, I mean, it's not the first time you saw the property, it was been a rental place with a repair shop in it for a long period of time. I mean, we all in development know that there's bound to be some contaminated soils underneath there.
I believe that we anticipated the number to be in the originally $25,000 to $30,000 range.
Okay.
Because the initial feedback that I recall was that the soil, it wasn't as deep and broad of a field.
I think those numbers are fair. I mean, with a Brownfield plan, we want to be slightly conservative to avoid amendments, because we can only be reimbursed for what's removed, or what's actually spent.
Correct, yeah.
So it could be less. Or is this?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Do we want to
Bring it back to the side of the table.
bring it back and talk about it?
Yes, let's do that. Any other comments that you'd like to offer?
Well, just that, we're anxious to develop this property and to give it the proper approach and the proper look that we're trying to achieve, and create a project for viable product for the community. We have a number of properties in the community already, and so we're very excited about and want to be here and do the right thing for the city. We just got to make it work for all of us, and that's why we're here, looking for some relief.
Mr. Chase?
If you did not receive Brownfield development reimbursement, in your opinion, do you think the project would go through?
Again, I'm not the right person to answer that question. I'd have to defer to get you an answer back from the other partners, but certainly would, in the overall budget, put a very significant strain on creating the quality of a product that we're trying to create here.
Okay.
Thank you. Discussion, Mr. Gordon.
I guess I'll expand a little bit on my motivation to say what I said earlier as far as what I believe to be the intent of Brownfield redevelopment, and the fact that this property, I believe, will be very economically viable for the developer, and that his due diligence on obtaining the property would have made some of these things known, as Commissioner Chase pointed out, that would have been expected: asbestos abatement, breaking up some concrete, and the amount of soil. But at the same time, there is some benefit to having them clean up the property to the strict standards that are coming across by the state. What I was going to try to propose, and I'm reluctant to do it in a motion yet until I hear what everybody else thinks, is that we reduce the amount on the 257,000 by 40%, bring that down to about 155, knock off the asbestos and knock off the concrete amount, and approve an amount. I'd have to add up the rest of the figures, but roughly $60,000 or $70,000 less than what they're asking. And as I finish my calculations, I might come back around to that if I hear what other people think.
I kind of agree. I think the amount should be less. I am of the opinion it should be even less than what you're citing. I'm thinking more or less, you know, offset the DTE costs, because that seems to be the driver, not the due diligence there, where, you know, if they didn't have the DTE costs, they could go forward with this, it sounds like, in my opinion, from what they said. So I'd be inclined to bring it down somewhere closer to the $150,000 to $200,000 mark, but I don't know if that's up to us to set the dollar amount because of the reimbursement agreement that hasn't been reviewed by Tim or staff. So my recommendation would be that it just be lower.
Now, the dollar amounts to be reimbursed are handled in the actual Brownfield plan itself.
Okay, so we would have to come up with some
Yes.
form, okay.
Ms. Douglas?
I'm tracking right along with my fellow commissioners here. I'll just say this, we offer incentives for development to get the developments that we need, that we can't get without them. And this is a development that I think we can get without incentives. There is tremendous demand in Royal Oak for multifamily housing. We've got something on our plate almost every meeting here. As Mr. Godek has said, this is an exceptionally desirable location and quite a clear site as things go, very ready for development, and I'm just not inclined to incentivize that to a great extent. Mr. Chase said somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000. That's kind of where I am too, and I want to leave the schools whole. I don't want I don't want to have any of the taxation, have any of that come out of the schools.
Which number are we concentrating on, the 389 or the 363 at that table?
389, 912 is the total.
I'm looking at
amount.
the 389.
Okay.
I would agree also with what I've heard. I agree with Mr. Chase in the sort of the switching of the utilities versus this. That was a little interesting to me. I don't think we've heard that before. I think that, Mr. Godek, if you're talking about a reduction, or anybody who decides to make a motion, I'm just wondering if we should refer to table 1. For instance, I see the line item of clean backfill, placement, and compaction for 20,000. I mean, to me, that's
And not worry about the total
something that
bottom.
might have had to be done anyway if some of the soils had to be removed just because they weren't desirable to build on. I don't know, Mr. Chase is a builder here, maybe he could comment on that, but that's, I'm trying to get at, wonder if we could, rather than, well, either do a percentage like you said, or go look at some line items to help us get where we need to be. Mr. Godek?
I agree with your comments. What we do need to be careful with, though, is as these developments are done, they bill against line items. So if we don't like something in table 1, like in my original suggestion, I was actually working from the simpler page in Mr. Hedges' outline of eligible activities and costs on page 204. Where we get rid of demolition activities, we get rid of asbestos abatement.
Page 204, here.
204.
204, I see.
On the
On the-
explanation.
I gotcha, okay.
And, you know, and then we, once those 2 items are knocked out, we then reduce all the other amounts by a percentage. That's where I was heading. Rather than trying to do the whole table 1, but I was just looking at getting rid of demo activities and asbestos, that takes out 35,000. And then I was doing some fast math to try to get the total bottom line down to about 180 to 200 by a percentage. Because that sounded like what a bunch of us are leaning towards. But I haven't, because I'm talking, my math has kind of gotten slow.
Who wants to do the math?
Yeah. So, Mr. Hedges, so we still need, I mean, we still understand that we need our Brownfield director, Mr. Twing, to review this, you know, their Brownfield proposal, because he's forgotten more about Brownfield redevelopment than we collectively will ever know. But if we were to say, make a motion that the total reimbursement should not exceed $200,000, can we turn it back to him to figure out how to make that happen, since he's not here?
It would actually be better to follow through what Mr. Godek is saying, by focusing on the table that's on, the page 204 of our memo. And just focus on, don't worry about the subtotal, the contingency and interest, because those will calculate with what we figure out, but the 4 items. But he's talking about eliminating the demolition activities, eliminating the asbestos abatement, and then reducing the amounts for the 3 remaining categories by percentage or a fixed amount, however you wish to do it. And then include that within, you know, if you're so inclined, a motion, you know, recommending of approval of it with those figures.
Mr. Hutchins, if
Yeah.
I may, the pre-approved activities are costs that has already been incurred. And I also would like to,
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
in the tables that you see as we've discussed, those pre-approved activities are costs that he's already incurred as part of his due diligence on this property. I don't know if those are something that you're considering for a reduction or not, but those costs are pretty set for what he's already paid for his due diligence, his phase 1s, phase 2s, and the asbestos survey. In addition, I would also like to stress that it's not just the utilities that's the issue here. There is more contamination on the property than was anticipated. So again, I appreciate your consideration, and I just ask that we really help to make this development happen for the city.
So the pre-approved activities are the 26,260?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
I'm
Klooster.
going to direct a question at Mr. Chase as the contractor on the commission. The phase 1 and hazardous material surveys, would those be typical for pretty much any project?
Any demolition.
And then anytime you find something that would maybe potentially trigger a phase 2?
Correct.
Site demolition activities, asbestos abatement, those are pretty typical on almost any existing project, and I don't think would be something that would typically be sought after as a brownfield redevelopment unless these other larger items were incurred. And
I mean, to be completely honest, yes, you would anticipate those going into an older commercial building, say in Detroit, saying, you know, you're buying a warehouse to turn it into condos. You know you're going to do a phase 1, phase 2. You know there's going to be something, and they even carried money in there. It's just not turning out to be enough. And to your point, you know, we want the project to go through 2, and it's not just the utilities. However, we are offsetting some of that. You only had 25 in your budget, and now you're asking for 390. So if we meet somewhere in between there, I think that any help is good help.
yeah, I would tend to argue that your studies, your site demolition, your asbestos abatement, I mean, those are things that should be anticipated and fall under contingency items that would be carried in a typical project budget and could easily be nixed from the brownfield proposal. As far as the soil and groundwater, you know, I think the studies generally are pretty good on what is found and carrying a certain, I mean, they can only be reimbursed for exactly what they spend on it. So I have a hard time trying to overrule the experts on what they're potentially gonna find.
Mr. Godek?
I guess I'm ready to give this a try. I'm gonna make a motion that the Brownfield agreement would include the amounts that I'm suggesting we adjust on page 2 of 4. Based on the petitioner, we would leave the environmental site assessment as is at 26,260. The removal and disposal of contaminated soil and groundwater would be reduced by 50% as a cap for that. Demolition and asbestos would be removed, and brownfield plant preparation would be allowed. That gives me a total of 175,010 as the subtotal. And I'd let Mr. Twain or Doug calculate contingency and interest. I would leave the time period the same. It looks like this is going to be over a 5-year period. So if they want to spread that out over 5 years beginning in 2020, that would remain. And that's my motion.
There's been a motion. Is there support?
Would you go over those again, please?
Certainly. On the eligible activities and costs, the petitioner mentioned that the first one was a fixed cost that was already incurred. So 26,260 would remain.
Okay.
The second item is reduced by 50%, and I come up with 128,750 when I do that.
Okay.
Demolition and asbestos is scratched, and brownfield plan preparation stays at 20K. The subtotal I come up with is 175,010. And then I would ask the planning to calculate 15% contingency and interest to give you a total reimbursement not to exceed number. So I didn't finish the last part of it, but
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion by Mr. Godek and supported by Ms. Douglas. Is there discussion? Mr. Chase?
Thanks for doing the math.
Mr. Godek?
I think we're being fair here with this. There was some discussion by commissioners that the utilities were some costs. We appreciate the developer cleaning up the site the way he's supposed to. He started off in that fashion. I think this is a good compromise.
Any other discussion? Call for the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So this now goes to the city commission, Mr. Hedges?
Yes, this is a recommendation to the city commission. We'll have to double check, but tentatively it looks like their meeting on June 11th will allow us to prepare the public hearing notices that need to be sent out to the other taxing jurisdictions, but we'll have to confirm that tomorrow or Thursday, that's the correct date.
And then the reimbursement agreement, would that come back here?
Yes, what I'd like to also, if we could have a motion to postpone consideration of the reimbursement agreement until the next regular meeting.
Is there a motion to postpone?
I'll move that we postpone.
Motion by Mr. Chase. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Klooster. Any discussion on the postponement? I'm sorry, Mr. Hedges, did you say it would be postponed to the next meeting?
Yes, the
Okay.
next planning commission, our next Brownfield redevelopment / planning commission meeting.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Not seeing all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So this has now, the reimbursement agreement has now been moved to the next planning commission meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, next under Brownfield other business, there's an annual report on Brownfield redevelopment plans. Mr. Hedges.
Yeah, this was being submitted just for informational items. It is a requirement that we submit an annual report to the board. So we've come up with just a summary of the existing plans that are in effect that gives the background information on each, and then runs down how much has been captured on each plan, how much has been reimbursed. And then we also total that out for all the plans. In total, since the first plan was approved over 15 years ago, we've, captured over $600,000 in revenue, of which $520,000 approximately has been reimbursed to petitioners. That figure is somewhat deceiving because over about 320 of that, over half, has gone to two brownfield plans, the Kroger PUD at 12 Mile and Stevenson, and the 33 on Harrison Lofts project. They've gotten the bulk of those reimbursements. The remaining plans are still either coming online or have not realized the value that they were anticipated to generate.
Is Woodward Corners the Beaumont site?
Yes, it is. Woodward Corners is the new name for the former Northwood Shopping Center.
Okay.
Or at least that's what they've put on the plans that were submitted for their building permit application. So we went with that name on the Brownfield plan.
Do you need any action on this, or is
Nope.
this just for information?
It's for informational purposes only, and if you have any questions on it.
Any questions from Mr. Hedges? Okay, thank you. Item D, is there any public comment on non-agenda brownfield redevelopment items? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Item E, the adjournment of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Godek, support by Mr. Chase. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Brownfield Redevelopment Authority is adjourned. Okay. So now, I'm gonna open the regular planning commission meeting. We will call to order, starting to my left.
Gary Casada?
Dan Godek?
Charlene Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Ann Vara.
Jeff Chase.
Eric Klooster.
Okay, we have a quorum. Item B, approval of minutes for April 10th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Douglas. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on these minutes? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Item C, public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on non-agenda items? Okay, not seeing. I'll close the public comment.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would point out that two of these items are site plans which don't have a public hearing attached. So
Okay.
we won't necessarily have public comment as part of that. So when you say non-agenda items, you might want to, there might be people who want to talk about items 2, 3, and 4 on our agenda.
Very good point, Ms. Douglas. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on items 2, 3, or 4? Those are not public hearings. Yes.
I'm not 100% sure. It's about the Woodward Avenue. I think it's the last item on your agenda.
The
3,500?
convenience store?
Two restaurant?
Yeah,
Okay.
party time.
Okay.
Okay, is that what it is? Okay,
Yep, it's a former convenience store
I know.
into a standard restaurant.
yeah.
Okay.
Laura Harrison, 2729 Trafford Road. I talked to several of the neighbors about the plans. We went, kind of took a look at them, and actually what we did, there were 3 items that we felt should be considered when looking at these plans. First of all, we'd like to see the green belt along Woodward eliminate the parking, because they're 2 very small parking spaces, and when you back out onto Woodward when you're trying to get out of there. So we'd like to see it, just like the green belt in front of the dance studio, bring it all the way to the corner. Okay?
Okay,
Number 2, we do not want to have any drive-through. We are living the life with Starbucks. And we just do not want to see a drive-through in that building. There's no way to put one in that we can figure out, okay? And the third thing, and I think this is not only for this restaurant, but for all the restaurants in Royal Oak, and that's get rid of the dumpsters, and all restaurants should have compactors. That is to help us lighten our little brown devils that run around with the long hairless tails.
right.
They're called rats, I think. Anyhow, we're trying to keep a clean area there, and there's so many restaurants, and dumpsters are heaven for rats. So we'd like to see compactors. That way, they're more concealed. And other than that, we really don't have a problem as long, you've got to remember that Bamlet has no parking on it at all. They have had no parking signs on it since the 60s because of the Acme Sports that used to be across the street from the party store and is now the gun range. So in the shortage of parking, so that's where they may run into. And just one more thing, the parking lot between the dance, Arthur Murray, and Party Time has always been more or less a gentleman's agreement on sharing the parking between the two businesses. Okay?
Thank you. Yes,
Again. Thank you for your time. I'm Kevin Contat. I'm at 3200. Actually, I'm at.
Which
30
item are you?
Oh, item number 4.
The fourth, the same item?
On the
Okay.
Woodward side.
I'm
at
sorry, your name again, sir?
Kevin Contat,
Okay.
3022 Bamlet. 2 other additional neighbors here to talk about this issue.
Hey, we have names too. We gotta get on the record. Joseph Coolidge Hwy, COLAGIOVANNI. I'm at 3019 Bamlet.
I got a tough one for you. Maciej Renowitz, MACIEJ, last name ARENTEWICZ, and I'm at 3002 Bamlet.
Get some culture in this place. That's good. You wanna leave?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just want to voice out a little bit of our concern about the proposed plan. We understand that that building has been vacant for a number of years. And we all understand this is Royal Oak. I think there's development that's going to come there. There's some kind of change that needs to take place there. Right now, it really resides as a spare parking lot for enterprise rental. I think it's kind of subleased out. I don't know if I speak for these guys. I'd like to see it become something. I'm a little reluctant to see it be another restaurant, given just what we have along there already. With the Starbucks was already alluded to, with the drive-through and the backup of traffic there. The amount of trash that's up and down the street where we live. But at least I'll share my biggest concern is what can be created with parking, a parking issue there. We already have the gun range next door, which causes a lot of parking at the end of the street. They are using that lot together. They, like the woman just shared, they share that lot right now. I think there's some discussion about opening up Bamlet to parking on the street, which, as she alluded to, that's been shut down for the better part of 3 decades. There's a lot of young children on that street. I think I stand for most of the residents there that we would hate to see parking allowed on that first strip off of Woodward. I think there's a reason why we live at the 13 and Woodward area of Royal Oak and not downtown in the 11 Mile in Main District. It's because we wanted that separation from that kind of traffic, that kind of packed streets, and because we wanted to raise kids there. And I think it speaks to, that speaks to our concern about safety with our kids, excess flow through traffic coming through our neighborhood. Bamlet is a street that connects Woodward and 13 Mile. So those are, I guess, some of my concerns.
Yeah, no, I would just add that
the parking is the main thing. We have a neighbor, fantastic lady's been there, I think she's 90. And she echoed what Laura was saying as far as there used to be a problem with the parking, and that's why they put those signs in. And I could just see if you open up those parking, if you take down our parking signs, all the folks who park for the gun range, now they're on our street as well. And not that we can be discriminatory about what kind of business you can have per se, but I don't know if we want everyone walking, all the way up and down the street with that. As well as Kevin mentioned, the cut through, we already have a lot of traffic as a cut through is one of the 2 streets, maybe 3, that go right through 13 and Woodward. I would be opposed to a drive-in off of Bamlet, similar to what I think it's called Woodsley, where Starbucks is. I think that was successfully zoned such that they couldn't have that driveway there. And I know they have a problem with that situation, but I would be concerned with there being some kind of drive-through or at least pull in off of Bamlet, which would just be problematic. So just want you guys to take that into consideration.
Thank you.
And same concerns for me. I'm a man with a family. I got kids that are on that street constantly, so an increase in traffic flow, increase in people parking on the street and walking around would definitely make it harder for me to watch for the kids and their safety.
Thank you.
Although it was nice when Doug's was there, we could walk down and grab a beverage.
The party serve, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we will close the public comment on non-agenda items, and we'll go to item D under new business. This is a public hearing, a special land use and a site plan, SP 180513, to construct a 118-room hotel, the Staybridge Suites, on an outlot of large-scale retail establishment in the Meijer at 5150 Coolidge Highway. Mr. Hodges.
Yes, before you is a request for both a special land use permit and for a site plan approval to erect a new hotel with 118 rooms on an outlot that would be created out of the southeast corner of the parking lot of Meijer's, which is located at 5150 Coolidge Highway. The site is zoned general business, and hotels are allowed as a special land use in that zoning district, provided they have at least 2 stories. So the application before you is for both the special land use and the site plan approval. We'll try to scroll down to the site plan for the project, but it's slowing down somewhat. How would that go? Oh, it's taking time. There's an issue with the height proposed for the building. In the general business zoning district, there is a maximum permitted height of 30 feet. However, that also goes up against the standard for hotels in that zoning district, that they have a minimum height of 2 stories. The hotel as proposed would have 4 stories and a height of 38 feet to its roof line. Therefore, they would need a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the proposed building height, a variance of 8 feet. Hence, a special land use permit is involved. The Planning Commission would need to allow the petitioner to seek that variance approval from the board before the ZBA may consider it. Regarding the parking for both Meijer and the hotel, actually Meijer's is a large-scale retail establishment as defined under the city's zoning ordinance, and they are required to provide at least 1 off-street parking space from every 300 square feet of usable floor area, plus they are permitted a maximum of 1 space for every 250 square feet under that same section. According to the plans we have on file for their building, Meijer's is actually over their maximum permitted amount at this time. By carving out the outlot as proposed, the parking for Meijer would be reduced to the point where it would be below the maximum permitted amount and still over the minimum required amount. So this would actually bring them more into compliance with the amount of parking that they're required to provide. As of right now, they're over the maximum permitted amount. The hotel would meet its required amount of parking, it would require, based on our review, 123 spaces for which they provide within the proposed outlot. Other site plan items, I've mentioned they would need to have a variance from the zoning board of appeals for the building height. They would also need to seek a land division approval from the assessor to create the outlot. As a contingency of the site plan approval, the staff is recommending that they petitioner enter into a reciprocal agreement with Meijer to maintain vehicular access to the outlot, and then a copy of that agreement be recorded with Oakland County. It's the same provision we've required for other developments that have been created, outlets at Meijer, a medical office building at the opposite corner, and then the most recently reviewed outpatient medical clinic that was reviewed at a previous meeting this year with the Planning Commission. Another contingency is the Planning Commission would have to grant contingency to allow the primary building entrance as it is oriented. Under our ordinance, buildings are required to be oriented toward the nearest public street. This one would actually face to the west, the Meijer's parking lot, rather than Meijer Drive to either the east or the south. The landscaping is as proposed. Our review does comply. They are removing a number of trees. However, the number of new trees that they are planting does comply with the recently approved ratio of replacing 2-to-1 ratio of replacing trees that are removed. And then the remaining site plan contingencies are our typical boilerplate ones for exterior lighting, signage, performance bond for construction, and meeting the building official and city engineering codes during permitting review. Again, it is a review for both a special land use permit and a site plan, so there two motions would be required. One for special land use permit, and then the second one for the site plan with the contingencies that I just discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. Any questions? Okay, is the petitioner here?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Andy Andre from Stellar Development. I'm here representing the applicant, Royal Oak Superior Hospitality. To go a little bit further from what Mr. Hedges had spoken about regarding the project, I want to talk a little bit about what Staybridge Suites is. Staybridge Suites is an extended stay, limited service hotel. It has kitchenettes, microwave, refrigerators. It's more of a home feel is what the intent is of the Homewood Suites. It is an IHG product. It's Intercontinental Hotel Group, which is the parent company of Holiday Inn. And so this is obviously a large international corporation that backs this. Emphasize that there is no restaurant that's within the hotel. It's continental breakfast only. And also the fact that it is a hotel. It's not a motel. We look at with it being an extended stay product, we typically see stays on the order of 3 to 5 days. A lot of what we intend as far as capturing here, business travelers, people also traveling family-wise. This gives families opportunity to have kind of an extension of their home when they do stay, and also obviously with the expansion of what Beaumont is doing. This would, I think, look to capture some of the business that's there as well. One of the things I think that probably comes up is why this location. As you know, a little bit of history to it. Obviously, with retailers such as Meijer, that industry has seen such a huge shift in how their industry is run, with online businesses and everything more in demand. And so, with this being one of their older products that they have, as Mr. Hedges had mentioned, a number of parking that is way beyond what they need. And so one of the positions that Meijer is doing is they're looking at possible disposition of properties that they have and looking at opportunities to work with developers that maybe offer a product that would coincide with what Meijer has as well. We've worked with Meijer Real Estate Department on a number of different projects over the last couple of years, very similar to what we are proposing here. Something that would be, cohesive with what they're offering. Again, that location might seem a little bit strange, but then again, with what Meijer is doing as far as their real estate division is, we have a good partnership with Meijer, several other properties. This offers us an opportunity to be able to develop something very nicely in a unused portion of their property. It's underutilized, and it offers that. And it's really not that far off. I mean, we're just off of Coolidge, so it's really not too bad of a location. As Mr. Hedges had mentioned, one of the items with the building orientation, we're on that corner of Meijer and Meijer, both on the south and the east. Working with Meijer, they like to they're very hands-on when it comes to the developments on their property. As I'm sure you're familiar with what they've done on the other portions along Coolidge. And one of the things that they're looking to do is to enhance what their building is, what their property is. And so having the orientation of the building more directed towards Meijer tends to lead to have more of a cohesive feel of a development, not as though it's just sitting out on its own. And so with that orientation to the west, we anticipate the majority of our traffic, majority of our customers coming from Coolidge. That orientation offers us both the best exposure and also, I think with Meijer, it offers what they're looking for as far as an overall look that coincides with their property. And then when you look at the building itself, the exterior elevations that we provided, even on the rear of the building, which would be the east elevation, and also in the south, but on a greater extent, it's not a monolithic building where it's just a large expanse of materials and that. There's a lot of relief within this building architecturally, and so even though it might be considered the rear of the building to the east, there's quite a bit of relief features that are built into it that I think it still makes it very attractive from Meijer Drive on both sides. We are looking at, obviously, for both the special land use and also the site plan, and I know there's a number of different items when it comes to the special land use that have to be taken into consideration by the Planning Commission. I'd like to just touch on those real quickly and how we feel that we address them. The first item, be harmonious in accordance with the general objectives of the master plan. As was mentioned, the zoning is, we do have a favorable zoning with the special land use, and with the master plan being general commercial, it also, coincides and fits within that, with what we believe the intent of the master plan. Another item, be designed, constructed, and operated and maintained to be harmonious within the general vicinity. When we look at the zoning for the property, the majority of the general business zoning within the city is oriented along Woodward, with some along Coolidge. This is a little bit unique where it's such a large parcel that's there. We are fronted on the south and on the east across Meijer by general industrial zoning. But when you look at the buildings themselves that are there, for the most part, we're looking with brick materials. We're looking at block, some metal. Meijer has some EIFS, also flat roofs. So how does our building fit within the characteristics of what the surrounding? It fits very well. We're proposing a lot of the same materials with stone, the glazing, block, EIFS, as well as the flat roof. We've brought the profile of the building down as low as we can to meet the ordinance requirements of 2 stories. But we're still challenged a little bit with the 30 feet. Next item will not be hazardous or disturbing to the existing uses As, you know, as I mentioned, we do have a low-profile building. Obviously, Meijer has reviewed what we have proposed, and they're accepting of it, and so they feel very comfortable with, even though a four-story building may sound very large, it really is a low-profile building, and it really won't be out of place that much through there. And with everything that we have, we're able to extend some services. I know the city, in speaking and looking at the feasibility study that was conducted as part of the project, hotels are one of the items, I think, in having available rooms is something that the city is in need of. The problem with that is the availability of land. And so here we are with this parcel. Next item will be an improvement in relation property in the immediate vicinity. As I mentioned, obviously, we're looking at a large, very, very rarely used parking lot. It's all impervious. There's not much there. What we're proposing would reduce the amount of pavement. We'd be adding quite a bit of landscaping. We're actually exceeding the landscaping requirements of the ordinance. So I think we could very much provide an improvement to what is there. The being adequately served by public services. So when we talk about public services, obviously, when we talk about the public safety services, fire, as well as the police, there's availability. We're close to the road. They have the availability to access the site. We feel very comfortable with that. The utilities are available right within the immediate vicinity of the property, and so that wouldn't cause any undue challenges there as well. Will not create excessive additional public costs. Well, in effect, I think we wouldn't be. It'd be quite to the contrary. We'd be adding quite a bit of tax base as part of what's being proposed. And then finally, we'll be consistent with the intent of the purpose of the ordinance. As Mr. Hedges had mentioned, we're in compliance with all the requirements of the ordinance when it comes to meeting the zoning with what we're proposed, with the exception of the building height. And as I mentioned, it's a little bit challenging. There's a little bit of a dichotomy there where the ordinance says you have to be at least 2 stories, but no more than 30 feet. And so with the design features that we have, it creates a little bit of a challenge, but we feel that the design that we provided and we're proposing would be very appropriate for that area. And so with that exception, we feel that we've put together a plan that works very well, and I think it would fit really, would be a good use for this portion of the city. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for the petitioner? Mr. Godek?
Do you anticipate any site development issues with having to move utilities that are already there, or existing sewer lines or brownfield or anything? Is the site good to you?
That's a very good question. Coming on, I was very well educated. You educated me on the brownfield prior to this. Yes, there is a storm sewer. We met with the engineering department, identified the locations of existing utilities within the area, and Meijer detention basin. It's kind of a regional detention basin. It's on the northern portion of the property. We show that on our plans as well. There's a storm sewer that outlets from Meijer detention basin, and then basically almost comes through about where the building is, where we're proposing. What we would do is we would propose to relocate that. We've worked some preliminary engineering information. We've shared that with the engineering department, and they felt very comfortable with what we're proposing. That cost would be burdened as part of the development. It wouldn't be anything that we would be seeking. And as far as the brownfield is concerned, I can't speak to that right now. I wouldn't anticipate that we would have any issues with that. We've done our due diligence on the property, and we feel very comfortable moving forward.
One other question on the, I'm kind of getting into the site plan before the use, but on your elevation, you call out a material of ephes, and I guess the concern with that stuff is when you have it at like the first 8 feet of a property, it's kind of fragile when people or whatever landscaping, whatever kind of bumps into it. Did I read that wrong, that you're having something that's more durable?
That is exactly correct. So we have dry stack stone as far as the whole first floor wrapping around the entire portion of the building. And in some portions, it also extends up as architectural features. So the ephes wouldn't start until the second floor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, this is a public hearing, so if you could take a seat, please. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this special land use? Okay, not seeing any, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion or motion. Mr. Godek?
I don't see a big problem with this development. It looks okay. I don't have any problem with the height. You know, if the developer's kind of troubled with meeting the 34 or whatever feet it is, with what's surrounding this, it wouldn't bother me if they needed a few more feet. So I'm not troubled with that or the parking. And looks okay to me.
Mr. Chase?
I would agree. I don't think I have a problem with the orientation of the building as part of the special land use. I don't think Meijer Drive is the actual main thoroughfare there in that area, more like Coolidge would be. So I think it looks good, and like they said, you know, they're taking over a vacant piece there, so putting it to good use.
Is there a motion?
I will move the approval of the special land use as is.
Is there support?
Support.
Support by motion by Mr. Chase, support by Mr. Casada. Is there discussion on the motion for moving approval of the special land use? Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, just briefly, you know, I've talked up here a lot about walkability, and yes, we have sidewalks along Meijer Drive, so people can get to places they need to go. But I don't have a problem with the entrance being facing the Meijers rather than on the street. I mean, this is really much more of a vehicular area, and I think that makes it much more sensible for customers. And also, as I believe he said, links the building with the Meijers in a more integrated way.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Any other discussion or comments on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Special land use passes. Under the site plan, Mr. Hedges, anything different?
No, again, it's with the, you know, the 11 contingencies as listed in the report. As I heard you discuss, you don't have a problem with the building orientation, therefore number 5 could be eliminated. And I believe that is the only revision that would be necessary.
Is there a motion on the site plan?
I'll move approval of site plan SP 18-05-03 with the removal of contingency item number 5.
There's been a motion by Mr. Chase. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor of moving the site plan for approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? You've been approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next, this is item 2, SP, it's the site plan, SP 180514, to convert a bar lounge, high top saloon into a hair salon at 25422 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Hedges.
Yeah, this is a new site plan application for a site plan that was previously reviewed and denied by the Planning Commission at the March 13th meeting. Denial was based upon issues with the seal and signature of the design professional for that particular site plan. The petitioner has submitted a new application. The plans within it are nearly identical to the ones reviewed by the commission in March, except for some slight modification to the second level facade elevations. They have had a new design professional has signed and sealed their site plan from the previous application. We have checked their information for that professional with the state of Michigan and found that their license is in fact valid. We have included that information with our report to you. The site plan contingencies are the same as were presented at the last meeting. The only one of note would be that the petitioner would be required to submit a revised landscaping plan to staff for review and approval, since there are some landscaping details that were not provided, but the remaining contingencies are standard boilerplate issues. The one extra one I should mention is our standard contingency for signage does require that the existing non-conforming freestanding sign near Woodward and Lafayette be removed, and I believe that removal is also noted on their site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. Any questions for Mr. Hedges? Okay, not seeing the petitioner is here?
Hi, my name is Roman Barrett, owner of Pila Salon.
Antonio Craparota. We're here also with our civil engineer, Daryl Gapshis. You guys are familiar with the site plan. It's almost identical as Doug mentioned. I'll point out the couple of things. We still have the southwest corner of the building, which currently has a radius on the corner. We're squaring it off, and we have a 9-foot by 6-foot addition on the south elevation, where there was an existing cooler room that was there, a 1-story cooler room with a shed roof. We'll be extending that to the west. That was also on the original plan. It's the same building. The changes that we did make from the last planning commission meeting, where we did change some of the materials and the look of the elevations, it was just kind of a change in design philosophy between then and now. Materials are pretty much the same. We do have flat roof on the second floor and on the first floor or single story part of the building. We have Ipe rain screen on the southeast corner of the elevation, and the rest of it's pretty much the same.
Mr. Hedges mentioned the removal of the non-conforming freestanding sign.
Yes, we noted that. We plan to take down the sign that's there.
Okay.
The signage that we're planning on will be on the building, and when we provide the construction documents, we'll have the signage noted on there and make sure that it's conforming.
Thank you. Questions for the petitioner? Okay, not seeing it. This is not a public hearing. Anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Then we'll bring it back to this side of the table. Is there a motion? Mr. Govic.
I'll move site plan SP 180514 with the contingencies listed.
Okay, there's been a motion by Mr. Godek. Is there support? Support by Ms. Douglas. Any discussion on this motion? Mr. Casada.
Yes, this petitioner provided us with a plan, submitted a plan last time that was not drawn by an architect, architectural plans. We know the story. I won't go over it. I do not believe it is cured by having a civil engineer seal the architectural plans. The plan does not comply with the zoning ordinance, in my opinion. It doesn't apply with State Statute 339-2014E for the reason that the plan does not bear a seal of a licensee as required by the statute. That statute requires the licensed architect seal architectural plan submitted to this commission. I firmly believe that the interests of the city of Royal Oak are best served by requiring compliance with the statute that will assure fully competent and legally licensed architects perform the architectural design of the buildings that are to be constructed in our community.
Excuse me, Mr. Casada, we've been over this at the last planning commission meeting. Ms. Douglas?
At our last meeting, the commission voted to accept the report from the Chief Assistant City Attorney specifying that the Planning Commission lacks the discretion to decide which professional seals, engineering, or architectural are required as a condition for site plan review. Mr. Casada, I appreciate your principles and the lively debates you bring to the table, but the commission has decided that we do not have discretion in this subject matter. And to bring it up and to hold that position disadvantages anyone who comes before us meeting the standards that we as a commission have agreed to.
Well, as you know, and I don't want to get into this debate, but I do not agree with the decision, and I have my own conscience to deal with, and I cannot in good conscience vote for something I think is adverse to the best interests of the city and the public health, safety, and welfare. And I'll leave it at that.
Ms. Douglas?
We often have split decisions at this table and other government tables, and yet it is the obligation of commissioners to support the majority opinions that we reach.
I'm going to agree with that. This has been debated many times at this table by some commissioners. It was debated so that we asked for the opinion of our city attorney, which he expressed last month, and we accepted as a commission. And we need to move on from this, accept the city attorney's opinion, and allow the staff to accept the plans under our current ordinance and rules, and as a commission, we need to react fairly to any petitioner that comes here without any predisposed ideas about what we'll approve or not approve. I think we need to look at plans fairly and discreetly as under the Zoning Enabling Act, and that's my opinion. Any other comments? There's been a motion, support to approve. Mr. Klooster.
I have a couple concerns that I think might be able to be handled by contingencies. My one concern is the parking indicated exceeds the required by about 8 spaces, 8 or 9 spaces, depending on, I'm not sure how they're adding it up. I think generally as a city and as a commission, we are supporting more walkable communities. And we have a tendency in our special land uses and PUDs to ask for fewer parking as opposed to more parking. Since there seems to be significant redevelopment in the parking lot, I would prefer to see that parking closer to the minimum required as opposed to significantly over. And the rooftop units indicated don't seem to be provided with any screening. I'd like to make sure that those units are screened adequately from the public.
Mr. Klooster, I have a question for you about the parking.
Mm-hmm.
Are you proposing that they reduce the parking and add some green space, or what? How would you? Do you have a proposal on how you would think that they should switch that out?
I
thoughts on that?
Don't want to be the designer for them.
Okay.
It does not, the building is set back and surrounded by parking, which is more of a typology you would see in suburban strip mall developments along Woodward and Kenilworth, where we have sidewalks. There doesn't seem to be any connection from the building to the sidewalks to promote any sort of walkability. So I would prefer to see a design geared more towards walkability as opposed to parking.
Thank you, Mr. Klooster. Mr. Godek?
I think I did make a motion, and I do hear Mr. Klooster's comments. And I would be happy with amending the motion on the second item as far as providing screening to the rooftop utilities. I'm still struggling with changing parking to, I'd almost like to hear from the petitioner if they had some Druthers, if the chair would accept that.
We have a motion in support.
I just wanted to hear the petitioner's
On this side of
thoughts
the
on,
table.
reducing parking and making it more green in certain spots.
Mr. Hedges,
Yeah, if you want to, here.
allow the petitioner
Yeah,
to.
I have no issue with that.
What are your thoughts, guys, on the parking?
As far as reducing parking, I think would be, it could be bothersome to my business. I'd much rather have adequate parking for my clients and employees to park in. I think reducing the spots would, I wouldn't want my salon traffic to push on to all the street parking, because there is some street parking that is up and down by the LA Fitness right there.
And if I can make an additional comment, the parking all currently exists inside a perimeter that has a masonry wall that goes all the way around it. So we're not really pushing the parking out onto the street. The parking already exists, the masonry wall is there, and
there is actually sidewalk that rounds that, so on the other
Right.
side of the
Between
masonry wall,
Woodward
there
and masonry wall.
is sidewalks.
So, I mean,
Thank you.
I've heard enough.
Thank you. There's a motion and there's been support. Is there further discussion?
I just wanted to amend the motion to include screening on the rooftop for covering up the utilities up there, if the seconder would accept that.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes, don't we routinely require that, Mr. Hedges?
Yeah, there is actually a new section in the zoning ordinance to deal specifically with screening of rooftop units. But we can add it as a contingency to the,
But that'll be taken care of, right?
it would usually during permitting review, but there's no harm in adding it to the contingencies for the plan.
I'd like to add it if that's okay.
Actually, it's not just me that has to agree, the table has to agree.
We haven't voted on it yet.
We haven't voted, we're still in
No,
discussion.
but if you're amending your motion, it's not up to me to, once a motion is made and seconded, it belongs to the table. The table can informally accept an amendment to it, but if people object, then you have to vote on the amendment.
Only if there's an objection?
Right, yep.
Is anybody objection to my amending it?
I don't think so,
No.
but just
Thank you for that.
parliamentary
Thank you.
procedure?
Thank you.
We have a-
Focal sewer, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, Mr. Klooster.
I just had one quick question. I can't proclaim to know the zoning ordinance inside and out, but I'm working with a lot of zoning ordinances. There's quite often a requirement for the door to connect to the public sidewalk. Is there anything in the ordinance that requires that?
Not that I'm specifically aware of, we do have requirements for building orientation, but then again, this is not a new building construction, it's reuse of an existing building. There is some generic language on what you're referring to, but there's no specific requirement that I can cite that requires a direct connection to the front of the building to a public sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Not seeing, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Congratulations. Okay, next item is item 3, SP 180515, site plan to demolish the existing restaurant Tubby's and construct 5-unit, 6,300 square foot commercial building for all retail sales, carry-out restaurants, and/or other permitted uses at 1612 East 11 Mile. Mr. Hedges.
Yeah, again, this is another site plan application that the board has reviewed previously. I believe it was at your last December 2017 meeting. A site plan was denied by this board for a similar project. That plan had the proposed building placed along the rear, the south rear lot line, next to the public alley, with off-street parking between the building and this 11-mile road. The petitioner has since revised their site plan and have now placed the building along the west side lot line next to Wilson Avenue. The building then has a height setback of approximately, I believe, 10 feet from the north front lot line along east 11-mile road, and the off-street parking has been placed to the east, or the side of the property, between the new proposed building and an automobile filling station to the east. The contingencies listed within our report are basically the same that were included with the previous site plan. The petitioner hasn't a specific use proposed for the property, although they are identifying that they will most likely be retail uses with the possibility also of a carry-out restaurant. We have identified that that as part of any site plan approval, that all the uses be limited to those permitted in the neighborhood business zoning district, and that it would comply with the minimum amount of off-street parking required under the zoning ordinance. And then anything over that would, of course, need to go to the zoning board of appeals for a variance. The others are, again, we were dealing with the issue of primary building entrances. Shall be oriented as determined necessary and advisable by the planning commission. And the primary building entrance for this building as proposed would face toward the east, toward the parking lot, although the building would align with 11-mile road with a small setback. We'd also like to refer that there be a contingency that loading and unloading be prohibited along South Wilson Avenue, and that all loading and take place either within the petitioner's off-street parking or within the public alley along the south rear lot line. The planning commission also has discretion under item 5 on the screening that to be provided along both Wilson Avenue and Woodward Avenue. If what is proposed in the petitioner's site plan is, the commission feels that is adequate, then that number 5 contingency can be removed. Otherwise, the commission should specify what additional landscaping or screening they would be looking for. And the remaining contingencies are, again, our typical boilerplate items. Again, it's similar to the plan that was reviewed and denied by the planning commission a few months ago, but again, the building has been shifted significantly to where it now aligns with Wilson Avenue and 11-mile road, and the parking is no longer between the building and 11-mile. It is toward the east of the building.
Thanks, Mr. Hedges. Any questions? Not seeing, is a petitioner here? Hello. We have your name, please?
My name is Sam Abdallah. I'm the owner of the place. And go ahead,
Hi. Hi, my name is Ziad Al-Baba. I'm the engineer representing the project. As Mr. Hedges explained, we did come in front of the board before with a different perspective for the location of the building. We have since then we have revised the site plans to actually be more harmonic with the 11-mile road. We do have the building facing 11-mile with some about 10 foot of landscaping, and also we did provide, as mentioned, the parking on the east side. We do understand the comments that presented to us from the planning commission, from the planning department, and we do understand the use of this building is not known at this point, but it's going to be more like, as we showed, it's going to be retail and possible of carry-out. We did provide a dumpster enclosure, and of course, we do understand the engineering aspect of this project. We did a few projects in the past that we dealt with the engineering after the site plan approval. We understand the zoning ordinance for that. And also on top of that, we did provide a small green belt along the side road and a 10-foot green belt along the front road. We did increase the size of the sidewalk. So actually, we are physically not trying to, as mentioned before, to interfere with the street parking if we require. At this point, and we, on top of that, we did present a new elevations for the building. Is actually we did present the elevation of the building. We understand that the main entrances of this building is facing the east. We had the concept to provide maybe three units facing the north and 2 units facing the east. But we did present at the end all 5 units facing the parking lot, the east side. The elevation, or the facade of the building, actually, we try to maintain the same rhythm all the way around on 3 sides. So the east side, that they don't look like at a flat wall. It's actually more architectural features as similar to the front of the building. And we're open for any comments.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Ms. Douglas?
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
We sent you away the last time, and you heard what our objections were, and you've come back with a development that is much more consistent with what we see elsewhere on 11 Mile Road, and I really appreciate that. I will say the idea of, I mean, we have a ordinance that requires entrances on 11 Mile, and you've mentioned this. I think I'm gonna, in my motion or whatever comes up here, recommend that there be an entrance off 11 Mile to whatever that north business or what those north businesses are. And there are no Bradford pear trees anywhere on this site. I'm very, very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chase?
I was not here the first time this came through. I just have a couple of questions, and I'd like to defer to the architect on the board. Per building code, these units are 1,200 square feet, it seems. Is there a need for the secondary means of egress out the back towards Wilson? Is that required?
Well,
I can ask both of you, actually. I was asking more or less him.
The occupant load would be less than 15 typically, depending on the
30.
use. So if there's 15 or more, then it would require the second means of egress. Otherwise, you can get away with 1.
Yeah, and the only reason the only thing I don't like is that it turns Wilson into almost like the alley. I know there's Jimmy's is right next door, but it's still a neighborhood street, so those doors are opening right onto Wilson's sidewalk, it appears. And if there was a way to, in just my opinion, bring those in or eliminate a couple of them or whatnot, I'm not trying to redesign it, but that's the only thing I don't like about it, I guess, is my point.
They are providing a slight setback from Wilson to where the doors would open into.
Okay.
So they wouldn't, actually under the building code, they're not allowed to open into the sidewalk. So
true. Okay.
they either need to be recessed or there has to be a setback provided, and they do. I believe it's a 5-foot setback from Wilson into which they could open the doors.
Okay.
So they don't open into the sidewalk.
All right.
I thought about that too, Mr. Chase, because I know that I've seen people in the food industry go out back to have a cigarette and hang out, and that's right along Wilson, which is a street, a neighborhood street, and I don't know that that's the best idea to, again, I don't know if code requires you to have an entrance probably for each individual store. I'm not sure.
The concept is actually also the travel distance. If we are over 50 feet, we're required to have a second exit.
Okay.
And also the occupant load, that's true. The issue here, it depends on the use of this place. If somebody comes in with a little carryout and has a small little waiting area, he may not require a second exit.
Okay.
But we do provide that. We have no idea, as mentioned before, who's coming into this place.
Okay.
And when we provide those doors, like we mentioned, we don't put a flat wall and put a door. We actually trying to kind of blend it in within the new facade that we're proposing.
Okay. Mr. Godek?
The parking lot you have here has entrance and exit onto 11 Mile. It also has access to the alley as well?
Yes.
And that alley will continue to connect the two businesses together. So I'd be able to come from the gas station, go through the alley into this. Mr. Hedges, I guess, is that alley maintained by the city, or, I know
Yes,
it's,
it's public right away. It's a public alley.
it's in really bad shape. It's like, I don't know. It seems like it's partially paved, and it's, I don't know if the developer is gonna clean that alley up and pave it.
We will actually, yeah, I've been at both sites actually, which we started with the gas station before. We do, my client do maintain, to clean the alley. It's not like he leaves it unattended, and.
It was just kind of like full of like potholes and.
I do that all the time, actually. Even at station, I own a station next door.
Right.
Yeah, I take care of the whole area, actually most of the time.
Okay.
We have no issues if we have to repair these potholes. We're not, we're trying to be very neighborly friendly, and then we have no issues with repairing any potholes in that alley.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay. Ms. Douglas, is that a hand up?
Yes, that would be a hand up. I move approval of the site plan modifying number, where did it go? 3, requiring an entrance to the northernmost business on 11 Mile Road.
Motion by Ms. Douglas with an amendment to number 3, requiring a entrance to the northernmost business. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Is there discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's approved.
Thank you.
Again, thanks.
No, wait. Thank you so much again.
Okay. This is the last item under new business, SP 180516, site plan to convert a former convenience store into a standard restaurant at 30500 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Hedges.
Pull it up. And we have a site plan application. It's to convert a former party store into a standard restaurant with dine-in seating. The existing building would be reconfigured slightly with a rear portion of it being removed to provide space for some off-street parking spaces off the rear public alley, and also for an outside dumpster with the required enclosure. There are several contingencies with the site plan, and they include a number of variances that the petitioner would need to seek from the Zoning Board of Appeals should the site plan be approved. Those include the minimum number of off-street parking spaces that are required, the maximum permitted driveway width, which concerns the parking spaces along the alley, the minimum required maneuvering aisle width, which is also related to the parking spaces next to the alley, and then having off-street parking within a required front yard setback, which would involve the parking spaces that are proposed along the south side of the building, between the building and Bamlett Road. There are some also a contingency number 5 regarding paving utilities and works within the public right-of-way that have a number of sub-contingencies that have been recommended by the engineering division. Those include repaving of the Woodward Avenue right-of-way, which currently contains a number of angled parking spaces. The engineering division is recommending those be modified into potentially parallel space instead, and that the curbed islands be re-landscaped and reconfigured if necessary. Also includes installation of a new curbed island between at the south end of the driveway between the on-street parking spaces, and also landscaping on the south side of the building within the Bamlet Road right-of-way and curbing. The other contingencies are our typical boilerplate ones. The biggest one, again, is the variances that would be needed from the zoning board of appeals. The major one being the required amount of off-street parking, which they do not meet. We have advised the petitioner if the item that's generating the need for the variance is the dine-in seating within the restaurant. If this was just a takeout restaurant only, or any other use such as another convenience store or any retail use, they could possibly meet the required amount of parking with the 9 parking spaces that are along the north side of the building. And they wouldn't need the ones along the alley or the ones along Bamlet Road. However, the petitioner has chosen to proceed with the site plan as proposed with the dine-in seating, and then if approved, to seek the necessary variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. Any questions? Ms. Douglas?
So, the parking, any parking spaces along in the Woodward right-of-way will never count towards their requirements, right?
No, under our ordinance, the minimum requirements for off-street parking, those are defined in the ordinance as parking that's within the perimeter of the property. It specifically excludes any parking within a right-of-way, which those would be. So that they're not counted toward the minimum amount they have to provide. Occasionally, they are considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals during variance applications as possible mitigation for a parking variance, but no, they cannot be counted toward the minimum amount that they need to provide.
And as we heard a suggestion that there be landscaping between the parking and Woodward, is that possible, given the space available?
Yes, it is possible. Those standards are under the engineering's required street standards. There does appear to be enough room within the curbed islands within Woodward Avenue to landscape. There's smaller ones along Bamlet Avenue between the sidewalk and curb.
Right.
But based on the engineering division's review, all of those areas are large enough to accommodate required landscaping.
Okay. Second question, we had a wish that there not be a drive-through here. Is there anything that enables the city to prevent that?
Well, there's no drive-through proposed on the site plan. And to have a drive-through would require a special land use permit as well as site plan approval.
Okay.
Before you this evening is just a site plan review. There's no special land use permit for it. So in order to have a drive-through, they would need to go through that process, apply for a special land use permit and a revised site plan, which would then be noticed for the required public hearing and would be back before you for their applications. I'm not aware of a way we could, with just a simple site plan review, you could prohibit them from having one, but what's before you this evening does not contain a drive-through lane.
Good, thank you. And then the third suggestion was a trash compactor, which I think is a worthy idea, but not within our power to compel. Am I correct?
That is my understanding. There is nothing within our current zoning ordinance that requires a compactor rather than an exterior or interior dumpster. The only standards within the zoning ordinance relating to trash disposal is that any exterior receptacles be screened according to the required standards, typically a 6-foot masonry wall, an opaque gate that they have provided.
Right.
But there isn't a standard currently in the ordinance where we could compel them to provide a compactor instead of a exterior dumpster, especially for just a site plan review. Again, had it been a special land use permit, there's possibly a gray area we could get into additional requirements. But in terms of a site plan review, I don't see where we could do it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Klooster.
I just want to clarify it seems like the 4 spots, there's 2 areas that have 4 spots each, one accessed from Bamlet and one accessed from the public alley. Those spots right now would require a variance because they're in the front yard setback?
Yes, the 4 along the south side of the building, and then 2 within the alley would be within the minimum required 25-foot setback from Bamlet Road. The 4 along the alley also have the issue of exceeding the maximum permitted driveway width, which essentially is the entire alley width along the property, and then not having the minimum required 20-foot maneuvering aisle. So the driveway width and maneuvering aisle variance relates to the 4 spaces along directly accessed from the alley. The variance regarding being within a front yard setback deals with the 4 spaces on the south side of the building and the southernmost 2 spaces from the alley.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hedges? Okay, now see, is the petitioner here?
Good evening. Brian Nager Companies. Thank you guys for taking the time to review this tonight. We are basically trying to repurpose this building. We bought this building, I'm sorry if you can't hear. We bought this building over 3 years ago, and we've had several meetings with planning to discuss different concepts, different ideas. What we're trying to do is to generate, put some life into this building and improve it. So we're trying to, bring things to life here. So we've proposed, this plan here, and there's certain things that we're trying to accomplish. Primarily, we want to just talk about the big picture here. What was there before 3 years ago when we purchased it was a party store. If we wanted to, which is probably the last thing that we'd like to do, is to put another party store in there. We think that we could come up with a much better, much more valuable use to Royal Oak and to the entire neighborhood there. So in no way do we want to do that. We'd like to improve it, to put a better use there and improve the neighborhood. So we're taking a building that's been vacant for quite some time, and we're asking that the commission here help us to make these improvements. So we're excited about it. We have some potential users that are interested. We are not proposing a drive-through. We have no intentions of putting a drive-through in there. We have no intentions of applying for a liquor license. I would just like to give you some of the history that we've had on it, and the difficulty that we've had in leasing this building. We understand there's some challenges here because of the existing conditions, and that's why I'm here to, plead our case. Is, we want to bring this thing back to life. So we've had multiple tenants interested in the building, but because of its existing size and configuration, it's just very difficult to lease. So we've tried to put our best foot forward here with the plan, and we understand there are some challenges, but again, we've tried to address any and all of the concerns. So I leave it open for some questioning, and we can review the plan.
Any questions, Mr. Casada?
You say you don't have a tenant yet.
We have one in mind. It's a juice smoothie concept. So we would like to stress that while we're applying for this as a quote unquote restaurant, we're really applying for it as a carryout with minimal seating. And this seating we're talking about, which is listed on the plan, 5 two-top tables, is more or less for customer ambiance, waiting while they're waiting for their products, that sort of thing. So, in order for, if we were to come up here and apply just as a carryout, you had no seating, there'd be nowhere for anyone to sit, nowhere for a potential person to, sit down at all. So to have the minimum amount of seating is important. And I would like to stress that, we're not trying to put a restaurant here. We have had interest from a restaurant before. It was Gus's Chicken that ended up not happening, and they moved to another site. But, this would be more of a casual juice smoothie concept for now.
Okay, and that's the reason why I asked, because I noticed that I don't even think there's, I think you have 17 parking spaces. I don't think you have 17 seats in there. I don't know. Not very many seats.
So.
You got 10 seats there. You have a counter plan there as well?
Yes.
Okay, so how many people do you think, according to this plan, the place sits?
According to the plan, it sits 10.
Okay, well, there's a counter though, but there's no seats at the
Oh,
counter?
no seats at the counter, I'm sorry.
Do you plan, I'm looking at the plan here, thinking that the south parking area, you obviously want it to be parking, but there are any thoughts of having that morphed into an outdoor seating area in the warm weather? What do you have in mind? What does your tenant have in mind?
That's a great question. I would love to put some outdoor seating here, but the thing that we're struggling with is every time we want to put seats, it's increasing our parking requirements. So that's sort of the catch-22. We would love to have some outdoor seating. It's just that makes the equation much more difficult for us. So the building in its existing form is 32 feet by 100 feet, 3,200 square feet. We're actually devaluing the building by taking some of it down. And the reason that we're doing that is because it's virtually unleasable the way it is. So we're sacrificing building square footage to be able to make it more leasable. So we're that's the direction we were going in. But I love the idea. It's just, I just don't see how we can make it work.
Okay, and I should have asked this question, it wasn't in here that I saw. So they got 17 spaces. How many are they required for this?
I believe the number was 25.
25.
For dine-in seating.
25, I think we're asking for 7.
One space for every 65 square feet.
And our ordinance doesn't relate to the interior configuration. It's just square footage, right?
Correct. It's usable floor area.
Okay. Thanks.
Welcome.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, is there any economic hardship, do you think, by classifying this as strictly a carry-out resident or a carry-out restaurant instead of a dine-in restaurant?
Would there be an economic hardship? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Does this building become more difficult to lease as a carry-out restaurant versus a dine-in restaurant?
Yes, it's much more difficult to lease. I think as strictly a carry-out, I believe we would be able to make it work in its existing configuration because the parking requirements would be less. But then you're talking about a 3,200 square foot carry-out, and that the demand is just not there because the building is too large, and nobody can sit down, so it makes it tough. Yeah.
Unless you had
We're
a
actually
really
going
good
in.
deli.
What's that?
Unless you had a really good deli.
Even the really good delis, I agree, but even the really good delis have 3-4 tables where you can sit down and wait or do something. So even if we were to put 2 tables in there, it throws it into a different category, different parking ratio, and again, all kinds of issues arise. But I'd like to focus on our primary goal, which is bringing this building back to life, because right now it's not something that we're extremely proud of. So we are prepared to, spend the money and do what it takes to make this a nice building and a nice, piece there, so.
Do you have any issues with the contingencies that the department has proposed?
Let's see. Well, I guess I'd like to fully understand what the contingencies are. Can we review those together?
I'm good for that.
As far as I understand, one of the contingencies is related to the right-of-way. I'm not sure where the commission or where Royal Oak stands on this right-of-way. To me, that right-of-way is there. It doesn't count for any parking for our use. And if it were a matter of, beautifying it or repaving it, I probably would be agreeable to that. But in order to re-engineer the whole thing and fix MDOT's problems, I don't think I should be responsible for that. But so that's one.
Excuse me, Mr. Hedges, could you address that, please?
Well, again, it's mostly under contingency 5, and again, those are coming from the engineering division. And again, they do mostly deal with repaving the Woodward Avenue right-of-way and beautifying both that and Bamlett Avenue with the landscaping. There is some element of having to reconfigure some of the curbs and the concrete barrier island as well.
Right.
So,
So on that south, where are we at? West portion of the property, there is a large island there. I would be more than willing to beautify that, add some landscaping, and I think that's gonna be a key element to the building. It's sort of the corner piece there. We are also, going to, another positive is there's 2, ingress egress points on Bamlett. We have no issue with converting that into one, so we're gonna eliminate one there, which is probably a little bit too close to the intersection. So we're gonna take 2 of those out, we're gonna condense that to one. We are also proposing to put the knee wall there, which will screen that from the Bamlett. And then also, add this landscaping between the sidewalk and Bamlett. So we are doing some beautification there in terms of the landscaping. I think that'll go a long way. I think the part about the front with MDOT is a little bit cumbersome to me.
What about changing it, what about making those parallel spaces instead of the angled spaces? That's one of the contingencies. You have any problem with that? Seems safer.
I've seen that parking up and down Woodward, and I would prefer to keep it there. If we had to do a parallel spaces there, I think you'd probably only get one space, so now I'd be losing 2 more spaces and probably spend a boatload of money doing that. So I don't know if that's gonna be cost prohibitive or not, to go in there, to engineer it, to redo it, and then, I'm doing all that for MDOT. I don't wanna sound unreasonable, but I don't think I should have to fix all of their mistakes.
But you're gonna repave that anyways, right?
I'd be willing to do that just for aesthetic purposes, but to go re-engineer it and redo curbs and do all that kind of thing and reconfigure it is I think a little bit more intense. To just repave it, I think would be a no-brainer. I'd be willing to do that.
I guess I was gonna carry on along those same lines. What you're having some problems with is section 5 here.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like you were ready to do everything that is in the contingencies except for putting curbs along Woodward in the same spot that they are now. I don't think we're requiring you to, or asking you to re-engineer it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that you didn't mention was this little 4 foot by something, little pad out there.
Right.
That looks pretty useless and everybody drives over already or something. I'm not sure.
If the city's engineer was agreeable, or we could get MDOT to agree, I would have no problem just capping that whole thing and eliminating that 4 foot curb.
I think you're really limited about exactly what you said about what MDOT allows, and I would defer to Mr. Hedges on maybe helping define 5A and D a little bit better, so he would understand what he actually would have to do, so we could leave that in on a motion.
I'm afraid I would have to defer to the engineering division, because that's where those specific contingencies are coming from. They're not coming from planning regarding anything related to the zoning ordinance, so I can't really address more specifically some of those that there may be an issue with.
Question, Mr. Hedges, would the engineer have to defer to MDOT as well?
For part in the Woodward right-of-way, yes. For Bamlet Road, no.
Okay, so I guess my take would be, all of us here are trying to accomplish a common goal. And, you know, we can reach out to MDOT or have that discussion, but, you know, why would everybody be bound by, you know, waiting for MDOT to, you know, get us to where we need to be?
I'm a little concerned at this point because it seems to me that, you know, we've got some directives under item 5 that have been fleshed out by our city engineer. And here we are now at the table trying to make a decision on your site plan. And I appreciate your concerns on some of these requirements. But we're not really in the position here to, I don't think, to dictate what the city engineer has already expressed or even roll the dice on MDOT. I'm not comfortable with that, and as a planning commissioner, and while I appreciate what you're saying,
Right.
these, to me, should have been fleshed out on your end at maybe before. Is that something that you want to do?
If I may, my name is Lisa Hamame, and I'm Brian's attorney.
Okay.
If I can make a recommendation or a suggestion.
Please.
Is that perhaps you approve it with ultimate administrative approval of paragraph 5 with the engineering department and MDOT. My fear is if you make it as it's written, a contingency, and then for whatever reason MDOT doesn't approve the plan that the engineer wants and that Brian wants, then we have to come back here again. But if you really just want to rely on your engineer, we will certainly work with the engineer, and then if you give them authority to administratively approve it after MDOT, then that would work for both of us, that you're getting the comfort that the engineering department will ultimately approve it, but we're also getting the comfort that we've got the go-ahead. It's just a matter of how we're going to work out this road right-of-way issue.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. Mr. Chase?
I appreciate the comments as well, but I would, typically our board operates the other way where it's on them to do their own due diligence. And I have no problem with the site plan, but if we're not here to negotiate items A through G, wouldn't we suggest maybe tabling it while they do their own due diligence with engineering again and MDOT and see if it's even valid before even wasting your time? Tabling it, that doesn't cost anything or anything like that. It's just it gives you an opportunity to vet out that front parking area.
Mr. Godek?
I would actually be more inclined to go along with the petitioner's attorney's suggestion. From what I've seen of this entire plan, this guy is really trying to make this thing nice and work and get someone in there. And with what he has to deal with on MDOT, I've heard some situations on that before, and I work with Matt Callahan all the time, the city engineer on the traffic committee, and I would trust his judgment on working with the petitioner to make sure the curbs get put back where they're supposed to, and it doesn't burden the petitioner any further. So I would be comfortable, and it's really just like he said he's okay with repaving it. He just doesn't want to redesign it and wait on MDOT for 6 months to figure out what they want to do. So I think the city engineer could administratively handle this.
Aren't those his comments, though? Aren't those his already administrative comments of the site plan?
Yes. Yes, I think they are.
They are, and I would only suggest amending them that he can work with the petitioner to configure the Woodward Avenue right away to, I mean, Matt's not gonna do something that's not allowed on Woodward. So if he's gotta work with Mr. Callahan, you're exactly right with what you said. It's gonna be what's written here.
Can I reiterate that I would be more than happy to work with the city engineer, you know, to make him, or make the city comfortable with whatever the city engineer elects to do. And if this is his strict guidelines of what he wants to see, then that's what we'll comply with. But I would just like to leave it open so that we could work with him to figure out a reasonable solution. And again, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture of the entire site, you know, including building, screening of rooftops, new HVAC, lighting, paving. I mean, we're gonna do a lot to this thing, demo a section of the building. So I kind of want to see if we can focus on that big picture and not brush aside the MDOT portion, but agree to work with the City of Royal Oaks engineer so that we can move forward. And there's a lot to do, so we will work in with him.
Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I'm reading the contingency. There's nothing in there that says anything about MDOT. And I'm real hesitant to remove a contingency that the city engineer put into the staff report. So changing this to remove that contingency and have it be done administratively, I think is not something that I feel comfortable with on this commission.
Ms. Douglas and then Mr. Casada?
Just reading this, I mean, I see conflicts in the contingencies, though, just on the face of it. Item D says landscaping of the curbed island at the northeast corner of Woodward Avenue and Bamlett Road. And then item E says installation of a new curbed and landscaped island within the Woodward Avenue right-of-way at the south edge of the driveway approach. To me, that's are that the same place? I can't, I mean,
No.
I can't picture that, and the drawing does not, or the plan does not.
It's trying to put something that would be better, that you could draw and try and put into words. It just doesn't come out clear sometimes. What we're, yeah, item
Does your cursor
D
show
is
up?
this curbed island here.
Right.
And then what the engineer was referring to in E is another curbed island at this space. He was referring to the driveway into the site
Oh,
as having that as a new curbed island at this location.
the south edge of the driveway approach.
I don't think it's shown there because he's asking for it, is what it comes down to, I think.
Right.
Oh, that's, okay.
They didn't put it on the
Yes,
plan because
he's
he's
asking for it.
asking for it to be added.
I got it.
Mr. Casada?
Oh, I was just, number 5 actually says that the paving utilities work within the public right-of-way shall be in accordance with the specifications and standards of the city engineer, comma, including but not limited to the following, and it lists a bunch of things. But that would indicate that we already have a contingency that would allow the engineering department to make other requirements that would be in accordance with their specifications and standards. So I'm not sure that we need to amend this. I think we could, it appears, just move and vote if we wanted to accept or to approve this with the contingencies, and you're still gonna give Matt Callahan some leeway here, because it's his specifications and standards that we're talking about. Am I right or wrong there?
That's how I read it.
We don't need to remove the contingencies.
If I can just make one more statement. My concern primarily is about MDOT. Because while I'm not an engineer, and I'm sure that your city engineer is very familiar with their requirements, the bottom line is until you submit a construction plan to MDOT and ask for a permit, you're not gonna know what issues they have. And that is my fear. This is very, very specific on what he wants done. And so if MDOT comes back and says, well, with regard to this issue, we're not gonna allow it, then if he doesn't have administrative approval to vary, then we have to come back here again. That's my only fear. I'm not saying I don't wanna have to comply with all of these requirements, but we do have that concern that MDOT might not allow it.
Mr. Casada?
Doug, would we have to come back here for that?
No, if it's something that MDOT would not allow within what the city engineer is looking to do, we wouldn't then, we would allow that to be administratively handled. We wouldn't require them to come back for a revised site plan approval if MDOT turns one of those down.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me,
I
but
mean,
I'm sure.
it's happened on a few other occasions, not similar to this, but, you know, if MDOT requires something to be done, there isn't much we can do about it.
I'm sure our
So,
ordinance
yeah.
recognizes the jurisdiction of MDOT. I would have to think, I don't have it right in front of me, but.
Now, if for some reason MDOT would not approve any of the sub-contingencies engineering is listed, if they're included within any motion to approve the site plan, should MDOT deny that, we wouldn't require them to come back to the planning commission.
Okay, thank you.
We'd let engineering handle it administratively.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Not seeing, is there a motion? Mr. Casada.
I will move to approve the site plans with the listed contingencies.
Motion by Mr. Casada, support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Casada.
I think it's a clever and ambitious, approach to this problem. It is a problem. We know that one of the problems on Woodward is nobody has any parking. And they've tried to come up with a way to provide themselves some parking. I think they've probably got plenty with 17 spaces. I don't even think they need the ones on Woodward, quite frankly. Depends how popular, I suppose it is, but I think they've done a good job to put forward a plan that can work, and so I'm in support.
Any other discussion? Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, I'm just trusting that once they develop specific landscaping plans for this site and the driveways and the so on and so forth, that our staff will be, our planning and engineering staff are reasonable people. And if you've made a very good case here, thank you. And if you make a successful case for something that you think is going to work, I'm going to put my faith behind our staff to agree.
Any other discussion? Mr. Klooster?
Just to clarify, the parking along Bamlet would still have to go to the ZBA and receive a variance?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that the proximity of this drive and the tightness of the parking spaces provided there creates a potential safety issue, which also forces an exit into a ADA access aisle on the other side that is a potential safety issue. And I don't feel terribly comfortable about the parking along Bamlet as from a safety concern. The parking on the public alley is pretty consistent along Woodward, that there's access into parking spaces from the public alley, and that is not as much of a concern to me. But these 4 spaces right on the corner here are a big concern to me, especially since they force the door on the north right into a parking access aisle.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, under other business, proposed joint meeting with City Commission on master plan.
I don't have much to add to this. This was mostly, I think, maybe I could defer to Commissioner Douglas, but I believe there was some discussion of holding a joint meeting between the City Commission and Planning Commission regarding the city's master plan.
Yes, the City Commission has voted to conduct a comprehensive master plan and zoning ordinance revision. The form that will take, though, remains undefined. There's a lot of expertise at this table, a lot of knowledge, I think, about the merits of the problems that we as commissioners see at this table in certain areas of the city, where I think we definitely need some revisions to our master plan, to our zoning ordinance. I'd like to see our expertise shared with the members of the city commission. I mean, especially you have 3 new commissioners there who are not at all familiar with planning and with the stuff that we deal with here every day. And I think this is a chance to educate them. It would be a public meeting. It would educate the public as well. We, as a Planning Commission, have voted in favor of a new master plan, and I'd like to see us have an opportunity to show why that's necessary.
Okay,
I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
Thank you.
Do you need a vote on that, or is that just for information only?
It probably wouldn't hurt if you're in favor of holding such a meeting to make a formal motion requesting it. There may be a good opportunity to conduct one at what would be the June regular meeting. Because as of today, we have no new applications for that meeting. And only one item was tabled, which we wouldn't schedule a meeting for just the one tabled item, but, not having any applications for the June meeting would give you an opportunity to conduct the meeting that evening if you wanted to.
Mr. Godek.
I move that we have a joint meeting with the city commission on master plan on our June meeting.
Motion by Mr. Godek. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Douglas. Any discussion on this motion? Mr. Klooster.
Just to clarify, would that be at our scheduled June meeting, or would that be at a city commission?
No, it'd be it would, if you are choosing to, it would be the planning commission's June meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Douglas.
Thank you all.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Support?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned.